U.S. President Donald Trump has promised a major stimulus package to combat the uncertainty caused by the coronavirus. At the same time, the number of infections has passed 1,000, with New York taking the strictest measures yet to contain an outbreak in a city suburb.
This is the suburb of New Rochelle, further up north from New York City. It's home to the largest coronavirus cluster in the United States, with more than 100 confirmed cases in the community. A 1.6-kilometer containment zone has been set up, with the National Guard deployed to help. Facilities that hold large gatherings, including schools and temples, will be closed for 2 weeks. But authorities insist it's not a lockdown. People will still be able to come and go as they wish.
It's very quiet, very kind of isolated. I spend most of the day at home. Cancel all my lessons, my activities.
And why?
I'm afraid to be infected, and I don't want to infect anybody else, just in case.
New case reports have been pouring in by the hundreds across the United States. People have been advised to avoid crowds, not touch their faces, and avoid shaking hands. A piece of advice the president says he won't be following.
Well, look, as the president has said, in our line of work, you shake hands when someone wants to shake your hand, and I expect the president will continue to do that. I'll continue to do it. What this is a broad recommendation for Americans.
The rise in cases across the U.S. has been attributed to faulty test kits that returned inconclusive results, as well as a strategy that initially targeted too few people. Authorities have also been criticized for downplaying the threat of the virus.
There are many people before the outbreak here who really took this lightly and said no big deal, and even told me, educated people told me the media is overreacting and blowing it up. I would just say, take it very seriously, assume it's coming to you, wash your hands, don't hug people, and get the information from the scientists, CDC center, and then love your neighbor, because that's what keeps us all going.
Just over 8,500 tests had been performed as of Monday, while in South Korea, close to 190,000 people had been tested in that same time period.
For the latest from Washington, let's speak to our correspondent Simon Marks. Simon, what's the National Guard's role in New Rochelle?
Well, the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, says it's pretty limited because, of course, as soon as we all heard the National Guard were being deployed, that conjured up images of the National Guard kind of enforcing this containment zone. But in fact, Governor Cuomo says they are basically there to deliver food to residents that may be unable to go out from their homes because they're being quarantined, to oversee community activities and to ensure that some of those larger gatherings in churches and houses of worship come to an end. Because remember that the epicenter for this particular cluster in New Rochelle, which is just north of New York City, it's nestled right between New York City and Greenwich, Connecticut. The epicenter of the outbreak is a synagogue in that particular city, and so the containment zone is across a 1-mile radius around that particular synagogue. So the National Guard, according to Governor Cuomo, will essentially be playing a community support role as opposed to any kind of role where they are stopping people from leaving the city. You can still travel in and out of New Rochelle. It is merely that the authorities at this point want to create that containment zone around the specific building that they believe may have contributed to the size of the outbreak there.
Simon, countries all over the world have been providing stimulus packages to help mitigate against the negative impacts of COVID-19 on their economies. The U.S. is also now under pressure to do the same. What would such a package look like?
Well, I think that's very hard to know, Dawn. I mean, President Trump, as you said, has spoken about unveiling a major stimulus package. But when he said that a couple of days ago in the White House, the people standing around him, including, we're told, Vice President Mike Pence, were stunned that he decided to extemporize and suddenly make that announcement. He went to Capitol Hill here yesterday for talks with Republican lawmakers, including Senator Mitch McConnell, the party's leader in the U.S. Senate, who is is said to be deeply dubious about the wisdom of introducing another payroll tax cut right now. We do know that the Federal Reserve Open Markets Committee will be meeting in the middle of the week next week, and it's highly likely that there will be another interest rate cut announced then, especially because President Trump is piling pressure on the Federal Reserve and its chairman Jerome Powell to engage in that activity. But the other thing that's being discussed here is the possibility of delaying tax day in the United States. April the 15th is the day that everyone here, businesses and personal citizens, are due to file their tax returns and make any payments that they owe to the U.S. government. The Trump administration is now considering delaying that. That in and of itself would create stimulus, because it means that all those people and businesses that were poised to write checks to the Treasury at least won't have to do so on April the 15th. So that in and of itself, the administration believes, would create some short-term stimulus to try and stave off the uncertainty economically that all of this is creating here.
All right, Simon, thank you very much for that update there. Simon Marks reporting for us live out of Washington.